All right, we are back with a new video, and today I'll be updating my power rankings for the Amazing Race 33. Now, last week I made a preseason power ranking where I gave my general thoughts on the players based on their bios, and I did a power ranking accordingly based on how likely I thought it was that they would win the race. But now that we actually have an episode and two legs under our belt, it's time to reassess and really compare how they are actually doing compared to what I thought coming in. So let's not waste any more time and let's jump right in. So starting off the list at number 11, we have the first boots of the season. We have Michael and Mo. And I was a bit surprised that they were the first boot. I said in my preseason power ranking that I didn't think they would win necessarily, but I thought they would at least make it through a couple legs, but obviously that didn't end up being the case. And even within the episode, I thought there was a chance that they would survive the first leg. I mean, while they struggled a lot on the art detour, and at one point they seemed to even be counting on Lulu and Lala making a mistake, we see more confessionals from them during all this, suggesting that they would triumph over Lulu and Lala. And it seemed like they would be surviving the leg at first when they completed the detour before Lulu and Lala. But ultimately, they got caught up looking for the next clue. Lulu and Lala was able to pass them as a result, and obviously through that, they were eliminated. But overall, I liked them on the season. I mean, I felt like we really missed out on them really getting more screen time on the show, given how they were the first boots. But at the end of the day, I didn't expect them to be the first boots of the season. So I have them here at number 11 because of that. And with that, we move on to the 10 teams still in the race, and I'll be ranking them based on how likely I think it is that they'll win the race from this point on. And number 10, we have a bit of a surprising pick. I mean, and considering I had this team pretty high on my preseason power rankings, obviously this is quite the drop off for them, and that is Taylor and Isaiah. Now, like I said, I was a bit surprised by that I had them this low so earlier in the season. And honestly, they weren't even the worst team to perform over these first two legs. I mean, they finished eighth on the first leg and they finished ninth, second to last on the second leg. I mean, obviously pretty bad. I mean, towards the back of the pack, but certainly not the worst of the teams that we saw so far. But the reason I have them here at number 10 is because of the edit they've received. I feel like compared to all the other teams, they received the smallest edit. They were the last team to get an intro package. Literally, not until after the second commercial break did they even get their intro package. And beyond that, like we barely see them throughout the premiere, despite it being a 2 hour, two leg premiere. And that leads me to believe that the show just isn't that invested in their storyline this season, that they don't really have a storyline to carry them throughout the season. And I could see them going out the next leg based on that. But even beyond that, I would be very surprised if they ultimately won the race as a result, as the show doesn't seem that invested in them. Plus the fact that they are towards the back of the pack, they haven't really performed well the first two legs. So for those reasons, I have them here at number 10. Now we're moving on to number 9. And while this team doesn't have the worst results in the world, I'm very concerned about their potential as racers moving forward, as well as their ability to return after the break. And that is Akbar and Sheri. Now, again, if you just look at the results, it's not the worst in the world. I mean, it's sixth on the first leg and eighth on the second leg. I mean, pretty mediocre, definitely in the back half of the pack. But despite this results, despite it not being the worst results of the players' sale in the race, I'm worried about their potential moving forward. I mean, we see them argue quite a bit during both of the legs. We see them not knowing what a Bobby was. But to be fair, I didn't know what one was either. But it was really the fighting that really made me concerned about their potential. But also the fact that so much of their intro package was dedicated to talking about their educational background, how they spent a lot of time working at school, which makes me very concerned that they're one of the teams that don't come back. I mean, the fact that the show returned from hiatus during the fall of 2021, like definitely when the school year is picking up, makes me think that they're more committed to that. I mean, they probably like tied up with that commitment to where they probably wouldn't come back. And the fact that the show focused on that so much during their intro package makes me very concerned there. Plus, also the fact that they are one of the older teams on the race, the fact that they ran into numerous hurdles along the way, the fact that they haven't been working super well as a team, and obviously the results just not being that consistent. So at the end of the day, I'm not too confident about their chances. So I have them here at number 9. Now we're moving on to number 8, and this is the team with the worst track record so far. However, the reason I have them a bit higher than the other teams we just discussed is because I feel like they have more potential based on the edit so far, and that is Lulu and Lala. Now, obviously, they had the worst track record so far. I mean, they were second to last on the first leg, and they finished last on the second leg, and obviously are saved by a non-elimination leg there. But obviously, it was a very rocky ride to get there. I mean, they're late getting to their first clue. They're the last team to finish the detour, and really had a decent shot of being eliminated there if they weren't quick enough to find the clue. And then obviously they start off at the back of the pack on the second leg and really have no opportunity to catch up. It's really no surprise that they end up finishing last there. But obviously they're stayed by the fact that it is a non-elimination leg. But obviously the results are pretty bad, and I don't feel too confident about them moving forward, at least on the actual race. But the reason I have them this high is because I feel like they are focused more in the edit. I feel like they have potential to be portrayed at these underdogs, these rootable underdogs that we could support. I think this next leg will be very crucial for them. I think there's a lot of potential for them to be eliminated at this next leg. Obviously, a big reason why they have them this low. But if they are able to survive that, then I think they could go on a relatively decent run. I mean, I don't think they'll actually win at the end of the day, but I think they'll make it somewhat far considering where they are currently. So that's the main thing keeping them this high on the list. But at the end of the day, I don't feel too confident about them moving forward. They're here at number 8. Now we're moving on to number 7. And again, this is a team that I didn't have too much confidence going to the race, but I feel like now at this point, I mean, I still don't feel that high on them, but the big reason that I have them this high is because of the results that they demonstrated so far, and that is Arun and Natalia. Now, again, I was pretty low on them in the preseason, and again, a lot of that was because of my concern about them possibly being one of the teams to drop out. And while that concern is still there, I feel like it's a bit less likely now. I mean, obviously, they got an intro package relatively in the middle of the pack, so nothing too spectacular there. I mean, obviously, they finished ninth on the first leg, which is pretty bad. And obviously, they really finished it out of nowhere. They didn't really get that much focus on there. But obviously in the second leg, they got a lot more screen time to where they obviously chose the correct detour there, which really allowed them to catch up and ultimately finish third on the leg, which was very impressive and a big reason that I had them this high. I mean, I can't really justify them being too low on the list when they had a third place finish overall. But at the end of the day, I'm still questioning how consistent they'll be on the race. I mean, obviously, going from ninth to third is quite the variance there. And again, there's still the possibility of them being one of the teams to drop out. However, I feel like if they're able to keep it up, they definitely have potential to move up on this list. But for now, I had them here at number 7. Now moving on to number 6, and I like this team a lot on a personal level, and I feel like so far they're demonstrating what I thought they would be on the race, and I think they have some potential moving forward, even if their results weren't exactly the best on the first two legs here, and that is Connie and Sam. Now, obviously, they had a very rough first leg where they got stuck in traffic early on, sending them to the back of the pack. I think they do some good work in recovering, even if they had some trouble on the detour. They ultimately finished seventh on the first leg, but obviously they are able to catch up on the second leg to where they are able to catch up on the roadblock due to Ray and Penn's time loss there. And obviously they choose the correct detour, that being the darts one, which really allows them to catch up. And they ultimately have a second place finish on the second leg. So to some extent, they're similar to Arun and Natalia in that they had a pretty rough first leg and a better second leg. However, the reason I have them above Arun and Natalia is that one, obviously their results are slightly better to where they were better on both legs than Arun and Natalia. But beyond that, I think they're less likely to drop out than Arun and Natalia are. And I feel like they just have better potential as racers moving forward than those two. I feel like Arun and Natalia might be more prone to arguments later on, as we literally got a confessional in the second leg about how they are prone to arguments sometimes. And while that didn't manifest much in this episode, I feel like that might amount to more later on in the race. Whereas I feel like Connie and Sam don't have that same issue for them moving forward. So that's a big reason I had them here in number 6. But obviously, the top 5 seem to be bigger characters moving forward. Now we're moving on to number 5, and I'm not entirely sure what to make of this team right now because, on one hand, they've been relatively consistent on the first two legs. I mean, despite them being in the middle of the pack. But on the other hand, I mean, I very much worry about their chances after the hiatus, and a big reservation that I have for them is that. So by number five, we have Cairo and Ray. Now, like I said, they did relatively consistently on the first two legs with fifth place finish on the first leg and a sixth place finish on the second leg. Now, the big moment for them in this premiere was obviously with Ray on the second leg's roadblock, where obviously he finds his clue pretty quickly, but is led to believe that there was more to the task than simply finding the clue, which caused him and Penn to waste a lot of time while other teams pretty much catch up to them. And obviously, by the time they return to their partners, I mean, Cairo is pretty upset with him. They have a bit of an argument there. And what really struck me was this confessional where Cairo is talking about the situation, and she was all by herself in that confessional, which I found kind of weird. Now, it has come to my attention that they have broken up during the hiatus, and I'm not too concerned about their chances of returning as a result. I mean, especially given their background of being on Love Island. However, I just worry about their chances moving forward. I mean, obviously, Ray losing time on the detour roadblock wasn't particularly great. But aside from that, I mean, I worry about their chances of working well as a team. I mean, even if they do come back after the break, I mean, obviously they're broken up at this point. So I worry that they may be more prone to arguments as a result. I worry they may not work well as a team. So obviously those are big concerns for me. However, at the end of the day, the reason I had them this high is because I feel like they demonstrated more consistency so far in the race. And while they may be prone to downsides at some point, I feel like until I actually see that on the screen, I feel like number five is a decent place to put them on the list. Now we're moving on to number four, and I feel like from this point on the list, every team we'll be talking about are all serious contenders. I feel very confident that these teams will make relatively deep runs on the season, and I feel very confident that the winner of the season will come from one of these four teams. But at number four, I have Kim and Penn. Now, they did pretty well on the first two legs. They had a fourth place finish on the first leg and a fifth place finish on the second leg. Mind you, they did make more mistakes on the second leg to where obviously Penn wasted a lot of time on the roadblock there with him thinking that there was more to the task than simply finding the clue. And then obviously on the detour where they did the decorating one, the more time consuming one, they obviously made a mistake by choosing Norway, which isn't in the EU, but they're able to rectify it and they're able to again get that fifth place finish regardless. And I just feel like based on the edit, there'll be major characters on the season. I feel very impressed by their performance so far as racers, and I wouldn't be surprised if they made it to the final leg based on their archetype, but also based on what we've seen from them so far. Now, again, I feel the least confident that they'll actually win the race at the end of the day. However, I feel like based on what we've seen so far, that they will be a major force on the race moving forward. So I have them here at number four. Now we're moving on to number three. Again, another major contender for me. Obviously, they had a pretty bad second leg, but I feel like they'll bounce back sure enough, and that is Anthony and Spencer. Obviously, they had a pretty big premiere. I mean, they got their intro package relatively early. I mean, given their story of them stopping a terrorist attack, obviously, I wasn't surprised that was a major focus in the premiere. We see them work closely with Ryan and Dustin on the detour, and obviously, from then on, they're able to hold on to the lead. I mean, they're first to finish the detour. They ultimately win the first leg, but obviously, they have a much rockier second leg where they're slow to get a taxi. Obviously, they get to the roadblock where they are passed by Raquel and Cayla. They end up choosing the slower detour, which is the decorating one, in which they obviously screw up on the first attempt, obviously causing them to fall behind. And even after that, they again had more bad luck with their taxi and ultimately finished seventh on the second leg. And obviously, the fact that they finished seventh is a bit of a concern there. I mean, obviously, that was a pretty bad leg for them. However, I feel pretty confident that they'll be able to bounce back. I think they've already shown quite a bit of potential. And plus, we see them forming relationships with other teams, namely with Ryan and Dusty, and to an extent with Raquel and Kayla. I feel pretty confident about them moving forward. I don't think that the seventh place finish will necessarily define them. However, if they continue to finish in the back of the pack, of course, then obviously I'll have to reconsider. But for the time being, the fact that they won the first leg and have shown potential so far in the race, plus the fact that the show seems to be dedicating quite a bit of attention to them, is enough to put them at number three on this list. Now we're moving on to number two, and this was a team I was pretty high on the preseason, and so far they seem to be living up to the potential I saw in them, and that is Raquel and Cayla. Now they get their intro package pretty early on. They talk a lot about being underestimated, which I never seem to get. I mean, I feel like based on their background, I don't think they would necessarily be underestimated, even if that's what they think. But obviously, we see very quickly that they are quite capable racers. I mean, they're the first to get to the clue. They do pretty well on the detour. They finished third on the detour. And obviously, they catch up to Ryan and Dusty, where they almost finished in second on the first leg. But obviously, Ryan and Dusty narrowly beat them out. So they end up finishing third on that first leg. Not bad. And obviously, in the second leg, they're able to catch up. They're able to stay in the front of the pack. They surpass Anthony and Spencer on the roadblock. Now, obviously, like Anthony and Spencer, they choose the slower detour and they make the same mistake on their first attempt by picking Britain, which isn't in the EU. But obviously, that doesn't affect them too much. And they finish fourth on the second leg. And again, I feel like they'll be relatively big characters on the season. I mean, even though I don't think they're prone to being underestimated, I mean, the fact that the show seems to be focusing on that, and the show seems to dedicate quite a bit of screen time to them as well, with them talking about them being flight attendants. I feel pretty confident about their chances moving forward, and I'm feeling pretty good about how they'll do on the race. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if they got to the final leg as well, or at least made a pretty deep run on the season. But I feel like there's one team who has demonstrated themselves to be better, more consistent teams throughout these first two legs. So I have Raquel and Kayla here at number two. And now, the team that I think is the most likely to win the amazing race so far is actually my winner pick that I selected in my preseason power ranking, and that is Ryan and Dusty. And so far, I feel pretty confident in my winner picks. I mean, obviously, they get their intro package pretty early on. Obviously, they harp a lot on Ryan going to jail for 10 years. And of course, they do pretty well on this first leg where we see them working with Anthony and Spencer, seem to be getting along with them. They're the second to finish the detour, and they finished second on the first leg. Mind you, Raquel and Kayla came relatively close to catching up with them, but it's really their second leg that really catapulted them up to where we see them just build this lead very early on. They're the first to find a taxi, they're the first to reach the roadblock, and they're the first to finish the roadblock with a pretty considerable lead. And really from this point on, like they were able to hold on to this pretty considerable lead. Obviously, they're the first to reach the detour. They picked the faster detour, and obviously they do pretty well on that. And they win in pretty dominant fashion the second leg of the race. I feel like a big reason that I feel confident about them is that, well, for one, they had the best track record so far. With them having a second place finish and a first place finish so far, they've gotten the screen time to where I feel like they will be setting up this major storyline of Ryan wanting to make up for lost time from his time in jail. Now, granted, I don't think they'll have this dominant of a lead moving forward. I think Anthony and Spencer, Raquel and Kayla, even Kim and Penn will be major competitors for them moving forward. And I feel like they will be in the mix for that. I mean, they're not going to win every leg. I feel like they might have a bad leg here or there, but at the end of the day, I feel like so far they demonstrated the best track record so far, and I feel pretty confident based on the edit that they have a major storyline going for them. I feel like that will cause them to be major contenders on the season. Now, I feel like Anthony and Spencer have the potential to move up, whereas Ryan and Dustin obviously can move down quite a bit on the list. But so far, after these first two legs, I feel like Ryan and Dusty are the team most likely to win the Amazing Race 33. And there we go. That will do it for this week's video. If you liked it, be sure to like and subscribe. I plan to continue this series next week where we'll be updating the power rankings again. I obviously have additional coverage moving forward for Survivor and Big Brother, so stay tuned for that. But for now, that is the video. See ya.